My life was a well-oiled machine of routine, the kind that keeps you breathing without ever really feeling the air. The faint rhythm of her breathing the only sound in the dark. Quick breakfast at the kitchen table, coffee shared in silence while the kids chattered about school, my turn to drop them off with quick hugs that felt scripted by now. Then the drive to the office, managing sales teams, chasing the same numbers week after week. Comfortable. Predictable. No excitement, but no risks either. I told myself I was happy. I really believed it, most mornings. That all changed the day Emily stepped into my office for the mandatory compliance check. She was the widow from HR, 6 months after losing her husband, and when she closed the door behind her for privacy, the small space suddenly felt smaller, charged. Her lavender perfume lingered, subtle and sweet, drifting across the desk like something I wasn't supposed to notice. Our eyes met over the paperwork, hers tired but kind, and an unexpected spark caught somewhere deep in my chest. "Just a few signatures," she said with a tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I flirted lightly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. HR visits are the highlight of my week now. Harmless banter, I told myself. Just words, but the way she laughed softly, that low, genuine sound wrapping around me, it made something shift inside, like the ground tilting under my feet. My breath caught, shame flooded and hottened fast. Shess still grieving, and here I am, married to Sarah, with a family waiting at home. What the hell was I doing? It had to stay harmless. It had to. A week later our paths crossed again during the monthly team lunch in the break room. It started ordinary enough. Emily joined our department's table because her office was being painted, sliding into the chair across from me with a quiet hello and that same weary smile. We talked about work at first. Safe ground, deadlines and metrics, but then the conversation turned. She opened up a bit about her loss, her voice softening until it was almost a whisper when she spoke of the loneliness that followed her home every evening. For the first time I noticed how her words pulled at me, this quiet warmth spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the food on the table or the chatter around us. Her breath hitched once as she described the empty, and I felt my own pulse quicken in answer, heat creeping up my neck. The faint lavender scent reached me even across the table, sweet and lingering, stirring something I couldn't name. I was ashamed of the way mine lingered on her. On the way her eyes held me a second too long. Sarah's face flashed in my thoughts. The kids' laughter from that morning. This was wrong. Just listening to a grieving co-worker, nothing more. No one gets hurt from that, right? But the warmth stayed with me long after the trays were cleared, sitting heavy in my ribs like a secret I wasn't ready to name. And as we stood to leave, her gaze caught mine one last time, that tired smile lingering. I wondered if she felt it too, this invisible pull neither of us had asked for. The thought scared me. It excited me, and I knew the routine was already cracking, just a little. The trays were still warm from the lunch rush when Emily turned to me in the break room, her fingers brushing the edge of a thick stack of HR folders. "These are heavier than they look," she said quietly, that tired smile tugging at the corners of her mouth again. "Mind helping me carry them back up to my floor?" I had asking, but I nodded before my brain caught up, polite, helpful. That's all it was. But as we stepped into the elevator together, the doors sliding shut with a soft ding, the space felt suddenly too small, too intimate. Our shoulders brushed in the cramped corner, her body so close I could feel the faint heat radiating through her light blouse. The lavender scent wrapped around me again, sweet and haunting like wildflowers after rain. She shifted her weight, and for a second our arms pressed together, neither of us pulling away. "Thanks for the assist," she murmured, her voice low, breath warm against the side of my neck as the elevator hummed upward. My pulse kicked up, loud in my ears. "This is nothing," I told myself, "just helping a co-worker." But the warmth of her lingered, pressing against the edges of my thoughts like a secret I didn't want to admit. The doors opened, and too soon. She stepped out first, glancing back with a soft thank you that made my chest tighten. I followed, carrying the files the rest of the way to her office, the proximity from the ride still echoing in my skin. Long after I set them down on her desk, that closeness stayed with me, refusing to fade. Later that afternoon, I found myself back in her office with the last folder, handing it over. alive in a way that sent a jolt straight through me. We both froze, hands hovering there, neither pulling back right away. Her eyes met mine, widened, uncertain, the lavender enveloping me fully now, pulling up some old memory of summer fields I'd forgotten years ago, endless and open under a hazy sky. My heart hammered against my ribs, breath shallow. I should have stepped away immediately. But the moment stretched, heavy with something neither of us named. Finally, I pulled back first, mumbling an excuse about getting back to my desk. My face burning. What was I doing? Sarah was waiting at home, the kids, and Emily still carrying that grief like a shadow. This had to stop before it became anything more. That night at home, Sarah's body warm under the sheets beside me, her breathing steady and familiar in the dark. But I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop replaying it. The brush in the elevator, the graze of her hand, the way her scent had clung to me all day. What the hell is wrong with me? She's a widow still grieving, barely 6 months out, and here I am, married, with a life I built. This was supposed to be harmless flirting, just words and smiles to brighten her day. It has to stay that way. I love my family. I do. Yet the desire was there, quiet but insistent, whispering that her laugh, her eyes holding mine, made me feel alive again in a way the routine had buried long ago. The guilt sat heavy on my tongue, metallic and sharp, like biting down on something I shouldn't have tasted. I turned toward Sarah, pulling her closer in the dark. But my mind drifted back to that office, to Emily's soft murmur, to the almost moment where everything had almost tilted. And as the clock ticked past midnight, I wondered how long I could keep telling myself it was nothing, when every part of me already knew it was becoming something. The office carried on like nothing had changed, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, keyboards clacking in their usual rhythm. My boss clapped a hand on my shoulder the next morning during our quick huddle, his grin easy and knowing. Emily from HR keeps checking in on your team's morale. Good you're stepping up like that. His words landed light, almost like approval, and the guilt I'd carried from last night eased just enough for me to breathe. It normalized everything, wrapped the whole thing in team player talk until the alarms in my chest went quiet. Just support for a grieving coworker, I kept repeating in my head. No one gets hurt if it's only emotional, right? The pressure of looking helpful silenced the rest, and before I knew it I was already glancing toward the HR wing, wondering when her next reason to appear would come. 2 days slid by and there she was again, pausing at the edge of my desk with the benefits form as her cover story. She set a fresh coffee down beside my keyboard, the cup still warm from her grip, steam curling up between us like a shared secret. Our fingers brushed when I reached for it, and neither of us pulled away right then. We talked longer this time, laugh slipping out over the weak office brew, her voice dropping low when she mentioned how quiet her evenings had become. The space between our chairs shrank without either of us naming it. After she left, the emails started arriving daily, first just quick confirmations, then little asides that felt personal, threads pulling tighter around the life I was supposed to keep ordinary. Each reply from me stretched a minute longer, my thumb hovering over send like I was stepping closer to a line I swore I'd only glance at. The ache followed me home that night, quiet but steady, mixing with the metallic taste of guilt every time Sarah asked about my day. I smiled, nodded, told her everything was fine, but my mind kept drifting back to the way Emily's laugh had wrapped around me like warm breath against my ear. This is still harmless, I told myself while the kids laughed in the next room. Just words, just listening. Yet the hunger for her nearness was already winning the small wars inside me, pulling me under like a slow current I couldn't fight. Late the next afternoon, the project review dragged into the conference room, lights low after the rest of the team filed out one by one. The door clicked shut and left us alone. She slid her chair closer than the table required, knees brushing mine underneath the polished wood, the warmth of her leg pressing through thin fabric and staying there. Neither of us shifted. Her soft cardigan grazed my forearm when she leaned in to point at a line on the spreadsheet. The wool warm from her skin, sending a shiver racing up my arm that I felt all the way to my throat. Lavender drifted stronger in the quiet air, sweet and haunting, mixing with the faint trace of her shampoo and the distant hum of the building's air system. My pulse hammered so loud I wondered if she could hear it. I caught myself checking the clock earlier that day, counting down the minutes until she'd appear. the flirtation no longer wearing its harmless mask. It had become this living thing between us, an almost touch that left me breathless long after the moment passed, an ache that made the rest of my world feel suddenly flat and colorless. Her breath came steady and close across the table, eyes holding mine a beat too long, and the air thickened with everything we still weren't saying. What if this was the moment it tipped? The thought flashed hot and cold at once, but I didn't move my knee. I let it stay pressed there, heart racing, wondering how much longer I could pretend I wasn't already falling. The conference room emptied, but the press of her knee stayed branded on my skin long after the door shut behind the last co-worker. Fatigue wrapped around me in the days that followed, heavy from nights spent replaying those moments instead of sleeping beside Sarah. Her steady breathing in the dark only sharpened the contrast, my thoughts drifting to Emily's soft voice, the way it had wrapped around my doubts like a promise I had no right to hear. This is getting too close, the warning looped in my head. Sarah doesn't suspect a thing, the kids chat about school like always, but one careless word could unravel the whole careful life we've built. Just conversation, nothing that truly crosses the invisible line. Yet the desire surged stronger, drowning out the caution, turning our talks flirty and intimate, each shared story pulling us further into territory I swore was off limits. The emotional weight of it became an ache I carried everywhere, sharp and unrelenting. Every word exchanged another step over the edge I had drawn in the sand. Then the company happy hour hit, alcohol loosening the exhaustion that had been building all week. We both had a few, the laughter in the crowded bar feeling like a shield for what simmered underneath. Her eyes held mine longer across the table, the wine bringing a flush to her cheeks that made my pulse quicken in ways I couldn't ignore. We should head back to finish that paperwork, she suggested, her voice low and laced with something we both understood. I followed, the decision feeling inevitable as we slipped into the quiet building. My office was dim, only the desk lamp casting a warm glow that softened every edge. Her lavender perfume mingled with the faint wine on her breath, creating a scent that filled the small space and made it hard to think straight. A distant speaker played Can't Help Falling in Love, the melody floating in like an old friend reminding us of risks. We moved closer without planning, the heat between us rising as her hand brushed mine. This time with purpose. Fingers lingered, traced lightly, sending electricity through me that I felt down to my core. Her breath came quicker, warm against my neck as she leaned in, our bodies drawn by a force neither fought anymore. The almost became real in that heartbeat. Lips meeting softly at first, then with the full weight of pent-up longing, hands holding each other close, exploring the lines of shoulders and waists in a tender urgency that spoke of loneliness and need. Clothes shifted in the quiet rush, fabric yielding to allow skin to brush skin, the intensity of our connection building on the desk's edge until it crested in shared surrender, raw emotion binding us tighter than any words could. Her whispers matched my own silent cries. I've needed this, the release emotional and profound, leaving no room for turning back. Afterward we lingered in the afterglow, straightening papers with hands that still trembled slightly. I looked at her, the secret smile playing on her lips, and my voice came out hoarse. This changes everything, but I don't want to stop. She nodded, her fingers grazing my cheek in quiet agreement, eyes reflecting the same conflicted fire. The office stayed silent, no one to interrupt the new reality we'd stepped into. I accepted it fully then, our steamy emotional affair now alive in the shadows, thrilling and terrifying all at once. Yet as I headed home under the streetleted, the ache returned stronger, mixing with the guilt that tasted like ash. Sarah greeted me with her usual warmth, the kids' laughter filling the house, but inside I felt the pull of two worlds colliding. What if this secret longing keeps growing until it consumes the life I thought was solid? The thrill of her nearness calls me back even now, but the bittersweet truth lingers. This might be the fall I can't climb out of, and part of me wonders if I leave and try.